Oh, boys and girls, we got a very important video for you today. How are you guys doing? This is David Vos. Hope you guys are having a wonderful day. Um, it's been a cool, sunny day here. I'm afraid winter's probably coming, friends. But I've got some things that I don't even know what to say about this. So I'm not going to say too much. I'm just going to read you some things. But we're going to dissect this over the coming days. We're going to have to get to the bottom of this, guys. And I've been telling you over the last, I don't know how many videos, we've been talking about the fact that there are no deities. There never was. This idea of a God, it just doesn't exist. And this is going to completely blow your mind. It's not even in the Bible, the word God, as we've been saying. But it goes beyond that. It goes beyond that that the Bible doesn't have the word God. You'll just have to listen to the rest of this video. This is going to completely blow your mind. And we're going to find out that there are a lot of assumptions that we've been making. And we've got historical records that might indicate otherwise. And so we're going to show you some evidence today that maybe Atlantis was not before the flood. We even find evidence of that in Plato's Critias, where he talks about the Greeks and Athens having a war with the Atlanteans, or something like this. And that Atlantis wasn't, according to Plato, really a worldwide flood before, Noah's day or something. And maybe it's some other flood. Because Plato talks about different floods, lots of different floods. But he does talk about one that might have been a worldwide flood. But he didn't necessarily call it the flood of Atlantis. But we're also going to talk about who Dardanus is, or the son of, the line that goes to Troy that seems to be the same line that goes up into Europe, becomes all the royal bloodlines of Europe. And this is really, really interesting and important. And we need to know this information before we can move on, friends. Now, let me start by showing you this little list here of genealogy. It goes back to Adam and then to royal bloodlines all over Europe. Look at this. This is a list of individuals in a genealogy back to Adam. And it starts off with Adam, Seth, Enos, same individuals we have there in our Bible. And when it gets down to Enoch and Methuselah, Lamech, and Noah, it then goes to Japheth. We're going to trace the line of Japheth through here. After Japheth is a son called Jathan, and then Zachan, and then Cyprus, which is probably where we get the name Cyprus of that island. But it goes down to Saturn. Yeah, Saturn is supposed to be a Greek god, and then to Jupiter. So Saturn and Jupiter, from this point of view, is from the lineage of Japheth. And then it goes to Dardanus and Troas and Ilus and Lamadin. And this is the lineage down to Troy. And then, like I said, all the kings in the royal bloodlines of Europe. But we're going to be tracing a line of kings that goes up to the Scandinavian area. And so you see there, it goes to Troas and then to Thor. It's spelled T-R-O-R, but that's in parentheses, that's your deity, Thor. Now, before we get to Odin, you get to Thor, right? Now, this is crazy. Then it goes to Lori. And it goes down through a bunch of names that you might not recognize, but if you go all the way to the bottom of this list on this page, you see Odin. Well, that's interesting. I thought Odin was probably before Thor, but Odin was just a man, one of these kings that ruled up in Sweden or Norway or somewhere. And he was just a man that became very famous and became the father of their kings, or the gods. And before Odin was Thor, as we just saw. So that's a whole nother video, right? I want to talk about that too, because Odin is a very interesting feller with his patch on the eye and so forth. And by the way, as we read or we saw in the Bible in Zechariah yesterday, the Antichrist is going to have the same problem with one of his eyes. So maybe it's indicating that it will be a European royal bloodline who's going to be the Antichrist. But I digress. Then you see a bunch of other kings that you may not even recognize who they are, all the way down to the present day. Well, not all the way down to the present day. We won't go that far. But these royal bloodlines of Europe can trace their line all the way back to Adam, but they don't do it through Jacob or David in this list. But where are we getting this list? Well, these are legitimate ancient lists of these royal bloodlines, and this has been translated by somebody into English for you. And let me show you what that looks like. Here is the what I'm getting this from. It's a translation from this original Sklodadunga saga analogus. And this is where we get this list of Adam all the way down. So as we saw, we got this long list of names. But we get down to this Scandinavian Norse god Thor. And it goes through all these individuals. Now, there's a divergence after you get down past Trojan and so forth that goes off into another king up in Europe. But what we're interested in here is Jupiter, Darius, Saturn. Okay, who is Saturn and Jupiter? Because Noah is just a few lines back. Noah and then Japheth. And so, according to this list of individuals, this genealogy, Jupiter and Saturn is of the line of Japheth. Now, we've done a lot of videos in the past, and there are lots of people that do videos on this, that shows that Troy and Europe all came from kings that were royal bloodlines from Noah, but through the line of Jacob, through his son Zerah and Dardanus. Now there's a Dardanus in the line of Jacob and the line of Judah. And then Judah's son Zerah, and Zerah had Dardanus, and some call it Dardar. And so some have said then this is the line of the Dardanians that went up to Troy. And they left Egypt at a different time than Moses did, and they went to Crete, and this is the Dardanians. Some say that's from the tribe of Dan because they're Dardanians, and some say that they're from Dardar, from Judah. But here we have this list that people have made, and we don't know if it's accurate, but it's an ancient lineage of the European kings up into the Scandinavian and Sweden area, going all the way back to Adam, tracing it through Japheth alone, and there's no mention of Judah in here. And if you say, well, yes, but Jupiter might be Jacob. But see, Jacob is not of the line of Japheth. And this Jupiter is of the line of Saturn, which is of the line of Japheth. Well, let me read this to you, and then I'll blow your mind with something else. This is what this says. This is a real ancient document. It says, Deity made Adam the first of all men. Seth was his son Enos, his son Cainan, his son Mahalalel, his son Phareth, his son Enoch, his son Methuselah, in Gamal, or the Old. His son Lamech, they were lost in the first age of the world. His son was Noah, who made the ark, his son Japheth, his son Japhan. That may be where we get Japan. His son Zecham, his son Cyprus. This is where we get the island of Cyprus, probably. His son Cretus, his son Silius, his son Saturnus, Crete, or Saturn is from Crete, the Isle of Crete. His son Jupiter, his son Darius. This could be, in other genealogies, Dardanus, but his son Erechonius, his son Troig, his son Elis, his son Ilus, his son Laomedon, his son Primus, Hofuconger, the sovereign king, Primus, the sovereign king, king in Troy, was called Munun or Menon. He married Troana, the daughter of King Priam. His son was called Tror, which is probably where we call, and it's written in this old runic words, letters, but that's Thor. Now this is interesting because one thing we learn already from this genealogy is that Thor, the deity, is a human being. And not all the way back to Noah or before, in the days of the flood or before the flood, but long after the flood, in the line of Japheth. Thor is just a man. And Thor was supposed to be the son of Odin. But look at there. Tror or Thor is way up there in the list. But look where Odin is. It's down further. So Thor is older than Odin. Odin is much later in this genealogy, quite a bit later, which I think is interesting. And pretty much squashes all these ideas that Odin could be Adonai or the same person as some deity in our Bible or something. These are just humans, people, in the history of the peoples of Europe. They're not gods from before the flood. But these are European kings. You see Olaf, Vladimir. And this goes all the way down to Harold Harkaffer. Now, here's a list. This is interesting here. This is Ilus, son of Dardanus. All right, we said that Darius in that list is probably Dardanus. So Ilus, son of Dardanus, and see if you can see this. The Trojan race starts with Oceanus, Tithes, and they have a child, Pleione, and Scamander, and Adia, and Atlas. Well, of course, Atlas is where we get Atlantis. So Oceanus was another child of Noah. Noah had, you'll find out here in a minute, Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And in this chronology, they're saying that Shem, we'll read to you here in a minute, is actually Titan. Remember how Zeus killed the Titans? Well, the Titans was the children of Shem. It's completely the opposite. In our Bibles, we've got Shem as the good guy trying to kill all the giants, which are of the line of Ham or Canaan. But in this chronology, from the point of view of Japheth, who has a child named Oceanus, and then Atlas. Now, supposedly in most chronologies, Japheth is probably the same as Poseidon in their Greek mythology. And sometimes they write it Poseidon. And Poseidon's firstborn son was Atlas. So it's a little hard to understand here because I don't see Poseidon here, because Oceanus is not Poseidon. Oceanus is another son that is not mentioned in our Bible. But if you notice that Jupiter and Zeus and Dardanus come from Oceanus, which is a child of Japheth. And then you get Ilus, you see Aeneas. Now Aeneas is somebody you find in the Romulus and Aeneas lineages from the Caesars. And you can go down through Remus and Romulus down here, Ares and Mars. Now Mars is another deity, right? But this is long after these other deities. But what I want you to take note of here is that this is all in the genealogy of Japheth, not Shem and not Ham. But we have this Dardanus. Keep that in mind, Dardanus. Now, here is another article. And this has some information which I don't think can be proven. And I've seen quite a bit of information like this that is very, very interesting, but I don't know that we can prove it. But look at this. It says, we have seen elsewhere in this publication that many people of ancient Greece and Western Turkey were of the Israelite tribe of Dan. But the Danites did not constitute the only Israelite tribe in the ancient Aegean. There were also many Jews there. So Mount Judah, just for instance, discovered at the location considered to have been ancient Philos. The Milesian point of origin were hundreds of inscribed clay tablets baked hard by the fire that destroyed the palace. The tablets are inscribed in the so-called Linear B script, found earlier in the palace at Knossos in Crete, as well as in excavations at Mycenae, Philos Encyclopedia Britannica. This is a reference to one of two very similar Minoan scripts found in Crete, Linear A and B. Linear B turned out to be an earlier form of Greek, while Linear A has been a subject of controversy. The late Cyrus Gordon, acclaimed for his translation of the Ugaritic, the language of Canaan, is not so respected for his decipherment of Linear A, as he claimed it is Semitic or Hebraic, which modern scholarship has not been quick to embrace. Nevertheless, there is much to support his conclusions. Though Linear B is Greek, it is interesting to note that it used essentially the same syllabic system as that used in Crete to write what was probably Hebrew in Crete. And the Minoan civilization of Crete was closely related to the Mycenaean civilization of the southern Greece. So it goes on to say that the Roman historian Tacitus wrote, some say that the Jews were fugitives from the island of Crete, who settled on the nearest coast of Africa about the time when Saturn was driven from his throne by the power of Jupiter. Well, these are human beings. They're not gods, friends. An apparent blending of myth with fact. Evidence of this is sought in the name. There is a famous mountain in Crete called Ida. The neighboring tribe, Idaea, came to be called Judea by the barbers, Greco-Roman, lengthening of the national name, Tacitus. So it would appear that the tribe of Judah was represented in the early Israelite immigration into Greece. Surprisingly, there was another Mount Ida in northwestern Asia Minor, near the site of ancient Troy. A publication by the Christian Israel Foundation notes that perhaps the most striking evidence of an Israelite migratory settlement in Cretan Mycenae is to be found in renowned pioneer archaeologist Sir Arthur Evans' monumental work, Mycenaean Tree and Pillar Cult, in which it is established that Hebrew rituals were observed there. This culture moved to Asia Minor, where behind Troy we find a Mount Ida, or Judah, and where, as in Miletus, survived the belief of the Cretan royal descent. We will come back to this notion shortly. Regarding the Trojans, one author writes, later Greek myths indicate that they came from the same sources as the Mycenaeans, but moved farther north to cross into Asia Minor at the Bosporus, the strait between the Sea of Marmara and the Black Sea in Russia. They then migrated into what is now Turkey. Finally, a branch under Ilus founded Troy. That's that Ilus in the genealogy, under the name Ilium, hence Homer's Iliad. The mysteries of Homer's Greek. The name Troy, according to Greek tradition, came from Ilus's father Troy. Quoting a reputedly much older source, a Scottish publication from 1897, mentions Israelites in northwestern Asia Minor around the time of the Exodus who were in alliance with the Greeks. The Hebrews then built an altar to the Lord, thanking him for their deliverance from the Egyptians. The king of Greece visited their camps with his Hebrew servant, telling them to build a city and fortify themselves against their enemies. They then commenced to build the city of Troy, of the ancient Chalcedonia. Shocking though it seems, this may well be what happened. The royal house of Troy. The traditional founder of Troy's famed royal house was Dardanus, as we were talking about. A few generations prior to Troas and Ilus, Dardanus in Greek legend, the son of Zeus, and the Pleiadic Electra, mythical founder of Dardania on the Hellespont, the nearby strait separating Dardania from Hellas or Greece, now called the Dardanelles. He was the ancestor of the Dardans of the Troad, the region around Troy. According to tradition, Dardanus fled from Arcadia across the sea to Samothrace, a northern Aegean island. When that island was visited by a flood, he crossed over to the Troad, being hospitably received by the Teucer, the ruler of Phrygia. He married Teucer's daughter Batia and became the founder of the royal house of Troy. That's in the Encyclopedia Britannica. In his acclaimed story of civilization, historian Will Durant writes, "Who were the Trojans? An Egyptian papyrus mentions certain Dardanu as among the allies of the Hittites at the Battle of Kadesh. It is likely that these were the ancestors of the Dardanoi, who in Homer's terminology are with the Trojans. Probably these Dardanae, or Dardani, were of Balkan or Greek origin, crossed the Hellespont into the 16th century. Through the 15th is perhaps more likely. Herodotus, Greek father of history of the 5th century, however, identified the Trojans with the Teucrians. Note the eponymous king Teucer already mentioned, and that Teucrians, according to the 1st century BC Greco-Roman geographer Strabo, were Cretans who settled in the Troad, perhaps after the fall of Knossos. Both Crete and the Troad had a sacred Mount Ida. This is all becoming much clearer. Again, these people were evidently Israelites, most likely Judahites or Jews. Indeed, even many of the Mycenaean royal house of southern Greece appear to have sprung from the royal lineage of Crete, which seems to have been Jewish. It is interesting to consider that according to Homer, the shields of the Greek leaders in the Trojan War were decorated with heraldic eagles and lions. These were the Israelite tribal emblems of Dan and Judah, respectively. The lion also appeared on the shields of the Trojans. This was made all the more compelling by the following quote from Biblical Archaeologist magazine. Lions, we may remark, are not frequent in Greece. And yet, over the Lion Gate of Mycenae, an ancient relief of two very large lions flanking a pillar still greets tourists. Virtually the same emblem later appeared across the Aegean in Phrygia in western Turkey, on the rock-cut tomb of Arslantis, or Lionstone, near Athon. Perhaps this was due to the symbol being carried by Mycenaean royalty, which was later evidently transferred to Miletus, the Milesians then influencing neighboring Phrygia. Is it possible that in these emblems we are seeing the Lion of Judah? Added to the intriguing possibility is this fact from the Harvard Travel publication. The excavated site of ancient Mycenae extends over a large tract of rough terrain tucked between Mount Agios Elias to the north and Mount Zara to the south. In fact, the royal palace sits right at the base of Mount Zara. Could Mycenaean royalty have been descended from Judah's son, Zara, the child of the scarlet thread? Zara and the line of Dardanus. Before answering that, we should first take another look at Trojan royalty. When all factors available to us are considered, it would seem that the founder of Troy's ruling dynasty is not so mythical after all. Sir William Smith's Dictionary of the Bible notes that the 1st century Jewish historian Flavius Josephus used Dardanus as the Greek form of a biblical name, Dardar. Okay, so Josephus uses Dardanus as a Greek equivalent of the biblical name Dardar. Dardar, or Dara, is listed in Scripture as the son of Judah's son Zerah. The name Zerah, who had received the scarlet thread upon his wrist in Genesis 38, because Judah had twins, Zerah and Perez. And Perez became the line of the Judeans that we read about in the Bible, that brought all the kings that were there in the book of Kings and Chronicles in the Bible. But the other son, Zerah, we don't hear much about him. But he had a little scarlet thread, meaning that he might have been the real firstborn because he stuck his foot out first and they tied a red ribbon around it. Some say this is the red hands of Ireland because the descendants of Troy went to Ireland. So the sons of Zerah were Zimri, Ethan, Heman, Calcol, and Dara, 5 of them in all. Chronicles 2:6, and in 1 Kings 4:31, he is called Dardar. Okay, I guess Dardar is actually Dara. For Solomon was wiser than all men, than Ethan the Israelite, or Zerahite, and Heman, Charcoal, and Dardar, the sons of Mahol, and his fame was in all the surrounding nations. Yet how could some of these men be sons of Mahol if they were sons of Zerah? A clue occurs in the title of Psalms 89, which gives the author as Ethan the Ezrahite, who obviously lived after David, since the psalm speaks of deity's covenant with David, and even of later transgression by David's successors. Therefore, it would appear that the sons of Zerah in 1 Chronicles 2:6 must actually mean the descendants of Zerah, which is common usage of the word sons in the Bible. And 5 of them in all must mean that among the extended family of the Zerahites, Numbers 26:20, there were 5 who were spoken of together as having a great reputation for wisdom and accomplishment. And that Solomon is noted to have outclassed them speaks volumes about them as well. They were undoubtedly internationally famous people who had carried out great exploits. That the 5, including Dardar, are not immediate sons of Zerah takes care of a potential discrepancy in this whole identification, since Greek tradition mentions a brother of Dardanus named Jasius, or Iasian, which is the same as Jesus. Jesus, or Jason, it's the same word, who was either killed by Dardanus or struck by lightning. If the 5 sons of Zerah are descendants of Zerah, this matter is easily resolved. It is also interesting to note that while the genealogy of the Pharez branch of Judah's family is given in great detail for many generations in Scripture, the genealogical record of Zerah's family is what you see above. That's it, except for the named son of Ethan, 1 Chronicles 2:8, and the infamous Achan of Joshua's day being listed along with his father and grandfather. This lack of information perhaps suggests that most of Zerah's descendants were no longer present with the main body of the nation. Perhaps they became upset with their secondary status behind Perez, believing it unfair because of the incident with the scarlet thread and Pharaoh's breach. It's called the Scarlet Breach. Whatever the reason, they appear to have migrated elsewhere. Yet could the biblical Dardar truly be the founder of Troy? What of Dardanus' descent from the Greek deity Zeus? A number of royal genealogies based on Homer describe the descent of Trojan royalty as follows: Kronos, which is also Saturn, Zeus, Dardanus, and Erichthonius, Tros, Ilus, Laomedon, Priam, and this lineage might appear entirely mythical. Well, it's not mythical. We've seen the list of kings all the way back to Adam. It should be realized that some ancient myths about the deities were actually rooted in stories about real people. In fact, many pagan religions began in part as ancestor and hero worship. There's your gods, friends. The gods are not gods at all. Isn't it interesting that Brigham Young of the Mormon Church, after Joseph Smith passed away, I guess they murdered him. But Brigham Young started this thing where everybody was saying, and most Mormons today believe this, that the true deity is Adam. He's the first man, the Ancient of Days. Now they got this from, Brigham Young got this from the Masonic Order that has a lot of esoteric wisdom that they've been, reading for years and years, even if they are falling into the dark side. So, with that in mind, it is rather surprising to discover what the ancient Phoenician historian Sanchuniathon, who is believed to have lived around 1200 BC, though some put him a few centuries later, had to say about the identity of Kronos. But first it should be recognized that all material from Sanchuniathon is derived from the works of Philo of Byblos, who was flourishing around the year AD 100, who claimed to have translated his Phoenicia from the original text. The authenticity of that claim has been questioned, but excavations at Ras Shamra, which is ancient Ugarit in Syria in 1929, revealed Phoenician documents supporting much of Sanchuniathon's information on Phoenician mythology and religious beliefs. The writings of the Sanchuniathon, as we have them, mention the Greek Kronos, whom the Phoenicians call Israel. Kronos, or Saturn, is Israel? Or Jacob? I've heard this before. He circumcised himself. He circumcised himself. Remember, you got to be circumcised if you're of Israel. Well, remember, Saturn was supposed to have circumcised his father, or castrated his father, Uranus. And he forced his allies to do the same. Israel, as earlier stated, was the new name given to the biblical patriarch Jacob. And the Phoenician historian further explained that this Kronos, or Israel, had a special son, Jehud, or Yehud. This is simply a shortened form of the Hebrew Yehuda, that is Judah. Evidence of the extent of Judah, later in the 5th century BC, are the seal impressions on storage jars, on which appear the name Yehud in various forms. Since the primary son of the Greek Kronos, Roman Saturn, was Zeus, Roman Jupiter, then Jehud would be the same as Zeus. Indeed, the word Zeus, Zehut, may actually derive from Yehud, as the Roman Jupiter, or Eupiter, appears to derive from the Greek Zeus Pater, or Zoopater, or Jupiter, Pater meaning father. Of course, so Father Zeus. Of course, a great deal of Babylonian paganism has overlaid onto this historical characters, creating this false deity or Greek or Roman mythology. This is in Alexander Hislop's The Two Babylons, which I don't put a lot of weight to Alexander Hislop. He was wrong about quite a bit of stuff. This is what a lot of Adventist Jehovah's Witnesses or early Protestants read and started saying, oh, we can't celebrate Christmas or Easter because it's all pagan. And, he mixes up a lot of this, he kind of speculates on some things. But thus, stripped of mythological embellishment, Dardanus, son of Zeus, son of Cronus, is Dardar, son of Judah, son of Israel. Actually, Darda was the great-grandson, or later descendant of Judah, as the word son can be interpreted. In any case, Darda was, in fact, a descendant of Judah through the line of Zerah. Now, here's an article from Noah to Dardanus. This article describes the descendants of Noah up to the foundation of Troy by Dardanus, and is based on Greek mythology, which is thought to be an embellished version of real history. Now, let me open that up a little bit so you can see that. Starts off Uranus and Gaia, which is Noah, as we've been saying on this channel for quite a while. So Noah has 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Well, the Greeks call it Titan, Kronos, and Oceanus. Well, if you notice, you see Japheth there as well, and he's called Iapetus. But they got another kid, Oceanus, which our Bible doesn't mention Oceanus, but that could be. He may have later on had another son. But what's interesting is that Shem is Titan. And all these individuals, Dardanus doesn't come from Shem or Jacob, but comes from Ham, Kronos. Now, I've been saying that as well in my videos, in my prior videos, that Kronos, or Saturn, was probably Ham. Because Ham is the one who saw his father's nakedness, which is another storytelling of castrated his father, so he couldn't have children, or taking over the lineage. So Ham takes over the lineage of Noah and goes down to Zeus. And they take over the world. But not just Ham, the Electra is from Atlas, and that's from Oceanus, so that would be from a different kid. So we've got Zeus and Japheth. Well, Electra is from Atlas and from Japheth, because Atlas is Poseidon's firstborn son. So Dardanus then is both from Zeus and from Electra, meaning from Ham and from Japheth. But Shem, he don't get nothing. Now, in the Greek mythology, Zeus has a battle with the Titans. Well, the Titans are the children of Shem. Now, in our Bible, we have the story of Abraham, a child of Shem, having a battle with the children of Ham. So that's probably the story of the battle of the Titans. Zeus and the battle of the Titans is actually in our Bible, but it's backwards. The Titans in our Bible are the good guys. But in our Bible, Abraham and the good guys fight the giants. They don't call them the Titans. But it's interesting because Titan probably means giant. So both sides call the other side giants. Interesting. They were fighting and battling, and the other side was like, oh, they look like giants, and they're, but they won the giants in their mythological history. They call them giants. But they're really just brothers. Now look at this. The real history behind the Greek mythology. There are good reasons to believe that Greek mythology is an embellished version of the real history. The so-called deities were just ordinary men and women whose deeds have been exaggerated so that they could be made into gods. I will go into the argument in detail in my forthcoming new book, but basically they are as follows. Uranus and Gaia represent Noah and his wife. Titan, Kronos, and Iapetus are Shem, Ham, and Japheth. This is evident from a Chaldean fragment, which says, after the flood, Titan, Prometheus, lived, and Titan overtook a war against Kronos. So Kronos and Zeus fought a battle with the Titans, and that's Shem. Oh, it's crazy. So Prometheus, not shown in the diagram, is a son of Iapetus in Greek mythology, and he appears in the Chaldean fragment in place of his father. Kronos must be Ham, because he appears in the Egyptian king list of Manetho, among the demi-deities that precede the first dynasty. This leaves only Shem to be accounted for, and he is given the name Titan, which is a collective name for all the children of Uranus and Gaia. So the children of Uranus did go down through the Titans. So the children of Noah were Shem, or the Titans. So Kronos achieves notoriety by castrating his father Uranus, an exaggerated version of the story about Ham seeing his father's nakedness in his tent. By comparison of the Greek and Egyptian mythology, it's possible to show that the Greek Zeus is the Egyptian Osiris. And since he is the son of Ham, he must be Misraim. Well, it's probably Nimrod. Nimrod is Osiris, which is also a son of Ham. Oceanus and Tityes were additional children of Noah, born after the flood, and there's nothing in the Bible to suggest that this should not happen. They got married and had both sons and daughters. Their sons were called river gods, and their daughters were called Oceanids. One of the Oceanids, either Clyme or Asia, married Iapetus or Japheth, and they had a son called Atlas. This is Atlantis, like the Atlanteans, who sunk in the sea. Remember, Plato talks about the Greeks having a war with the Atlanteans. Maybe they weren't that far back. Maybe it's just a local flood. The Atlanteans are just the children of Atlas. And this is long after the flood. Who had a daughter called Electra. Wouldn't it be weird if we were wrong about everything we've ever been told? And all of this speculation that we've been doing for years now about Atlantis being before the flood and all these different things. Maybe it's not even, there are no gods. It's just historical ancestral worship. And it's much earlier than what we're thinking. After the flood. So, Atlas had a daughter called Electra. She married Zeus, who is the same as the Egyptian Osiris, and the biblical Mizraim, which I think probably is Nimrod, not Mizraim. Nimrod is Osiris, I believe. So Zeus and Electra had a son called Dardanus, who became the first king of Troy. Well, if Zeus is Egyptian, or it's Nimrod, a Babylonian king from Ham, then Dardanus is actually not a son of Judah. Because what I was reading to you earlier that a lot of people are going by, Herbert W. Armstrong has this whole belief, the whole religion on this, and a lot of, sacred names groups and modern peoples today believe that, and many people believe, the European peoples and the kings trace their lines all the way back to Adam, and many of them believe they're children of King David. Well, maybe they are, but if it is, Dardanus is also from Ham and from Japheth, as well as from Shem, and we're going to give you some evidence for that as a conclusion to this today, friends. And that is a glorious thing, because what we're going to find is that the genealogies and everything through in the Bible, and how Abraham got a promise of a multitude of nations, of all nations, tribes, and tongues. In the end, the promise comes down to Christ and is to all nations. And we're going to show you how he worked that out. There's no chosen race. It's just something that these Judeans got in their head and began to teach, and it's never been true. Okay, they should never have hated their brother Esau, and they should never have hated the Canaanites. That was the law of the lower ego. That was their own pride. But the promise that was given to Abraham was that all nations shall be blessed. So now we've got people saying that Zeus is from Japheth, others saying it's from Ham, and others saying, no, it's really from Judah or from Shem. So Dardanus married Badia, the granddaughter of Scamander, the river god, who represents the river near Troy. Her father was Tusir, king of the Tersyrians. Dardanus and Batia had a son called Erectonius, who succeeded him as the next king of Troy. And the line continues as far as the Trojan War. Virgil tells the story of how Aeneas fled from the burning city of Troy and established the kingdom in Italy. There is Brutus, the great-grandson of Aeneas, who came to Britain and founded the British Welsh monarchy. So maybe the royal bloodlines of Europe aren't from Jacob. Maybe they're actually from Ham. And from Jacob. And from Japheth. And this is what I've been telling you guys for, several years. But the Canaanite line through Ham is the woman line. The male line is split between Japheth and Judah, because Japheth is dwell in his tent. So the birthright went down through Ham, but was hijacked by Jacob, who stole it from Esau. And now, who knows? Taking all this together, we have a continuous genealogy from Noah to the Welsh monarchy. But that's not all. Berosus, a Babylonian priest of the 3rd century, gives a list of 10 kings before the flood, corresponding to the 10 patriarchs from Adam to Noah, which is what I've been saying in the Egyptian, the deities that are called the Enneads, or the 9, are from Lamech all the way back to Adam. And then Noah and his 3 kids and their 3 wives, and his wife is the 8, and that's the Ogdog. And those are the deities, Noah and his 3 sons and their 3 daughters, and his wife. So I'm going to leave it there, guys. I mean, you probably had your ear full of information today. But I will tell you that don't be confused. This is actually going to clear up everything. Our Heavenly Father is love. He loves everybody. There is no chosen race. And the 70 nations came out of the loins of Jacob. And yeah, all the prophecies, like the promise that was given to Abraham, all nations shall be blessed in thy seed. But it wasn't Abraham, it was thy seed, which is Christ. And so if you look at all of this parable of the Old Testament, that shows you the Judeans and their chosenness and their blasphemous, laws and their genocide and all stuff. This is not an example of what we're supposed to do. This is an example of what we're not supposed to do. This is a tribes and peoples, not tribes, more peoples, brothers that played parts, Jacob and Esau, the flesh and the spirit. Okay, and so they never got the sense of it. And when Christ came, he said, don't you understand? Were there no widows in Israel? He had to go to Zarephath? She fed Elijah? You're not the chosen people. Who do you think you are? And Jesus meets a Canaanite woman. And in their law, I was just talking to a friend, in the law of Moses, the Canaanites are just dogs. And so you wouldn't, that's the law, if that's the truth, you wouldn't feed the dogs. You'd give them the crumbs off your table, but you ain't going to give them the good food. And, that's like the word worship in the Greek. It's literally be like a dog and lick somebody's feet. But we don't worship. That's the example of the law of Moses, which is the blindness, that they were veiled. So when Jesus said, oh, you don't give the food of the children to the dogs and cast it to the dogs, and the disciples were looking at him and like, yeah, that's what our law says. Tell her, go away, Jesus. But then Jesus said, but you see, that's not what we do, because that's not true. And he healed her, and he fed her, and he loved her, because he loves everybody. That's not an example. I know a lot of people point to these scriptures where, well, Jesus said this or that or the other thing. Like when they said, oh, Jesus, you got to keep the Sabbath, or, oh, Jesus, you shouldn't lie or anything, or commit adultery. And Jesus said, well, if you look at a woman, you've committed adultery in your heart. And so people say, oh, see, he believed in the law. You shouldn't covet. You shouldn't look at women. But you see, if that's true, then we're all dead, because everybody has thoughts in their head. What Jesus was saying is, no, we don't go by that. That's ridiculous. We don't do that. He was demonstrating them the ridiculousness of the law, that we're going to have police come around and policing your thoughts. You don't covet, don't think bad thoughts. Well, what is a bad thought? Jesus said, our Heavenly Father's not that way. He lets the sun shine on the supposed righteous and the unrighteous. Well, if they were really unrighteous, why would he do that? Why would the Lord allow it? Well, Jesus didn't say that he allows the sun to shine on the wicked. What he was saying is nobody's wicked, because our Heavenly Father's not partial. You see, that's what Jesus taught. That's what the apostles taught. There is neither Jew nor Greek. And I know that was hard for Peter, because he was like, but Lord, they're unclean. We can't preach the gospel to the Gentiles. And an angel came down to Peter and showed him a vision and said, see all these unclean animals, eat it. And Peter's like, no, Lord, I will not. I will never put unclean garbage in my mouth. That's unclean. And the angel said, do not call unclean what I have sanctified. The Gentiles he was talking about, the Canaanites, they're not unclean. It's in your little unclean mind. You've misunderstood the world. You're following the lower carnal nature. You're not following the light. You rejected me on Mount Horeb. This law, that's not my law. My Father keeps on working until now. He doesn't rest. He doesn't, he needs to rest. He's everywhere and in all, through all, and above all. He loves everybody. He's not partial. Well, Moses said we could divorce. Should we divorce? Jesus said, well, it wasn't that way from the beginning. Moses was wrong. Moses brought the law. I bring the truth. You guys are wrong. And all that Old Testament stuff you're misunderstanding. You must understand that it's a parable about the lower ego and the vengeful deity who hates you. And the reason you've accepted it is because you all are following your own vengeful self. That's what you want. You get bitterness and anger and hate and jealousy within you. And how dark is that darkness that's within you, Jesus said. So anyway, I'm going to cut it a little short here and let you guys mull that over, and we're going to continue on with this. And yeah, we're not going to forget about what we were talking about yesterday either, but we got all this stuff that we want to get into so we can really understand what's going on. We have to have faith. We have to trust that there's a plan. The Lord loves us all. Anyway, I'm going to let you guys go. Hope you have a wonderful evening. The Lord will bless you guys, and we'll see you tomorrow. Have a good one, guys.